When I was 13, my parents starved me and told me, "You don't deserve food if you can't pay for it." When I was 15, they tried to get me to pay rent, so I called CPS and ruined their lives. Hey, Reddit, I'm writing this because I know there's a kid somewhere munching crackers in his room while his parents order DoorDash in the next room. That kid thinks that's just how life is. No, it isn't. They can't hide from it long if he stays calm and patient. My parents, who are both 17 and male, only had one talent. They looked like they had it all together. My dad sold medical equipment and made big money. He had a corporate car and an expense account that he used like an ATM. My mom hadn't worked in years, yet she always had new nails and a different set of throw pillows from HomeGoods. We appeared like a solid middle-class family living in the suburbs outside of Charlotte from the outside. That whole thing broke when I turned 13. When I got home from school, I needed supplies for a history project. The typical things, such poster board and markers. My mom was sitting on the couch next to a pile of shopping bags from TJ Maxx and scrolling through her phone. I asked her if she could take me to Walmart, but she didn't even look up. I just stated I was old enough to sort it out. My dad and her determined that I needed to learn how things function in the real world. Then she gave me a long spiel about how kids my age in other countries were taking care of whole families and how American kids were weak because their parents spoiled them instead of making them stronger. They stopped giving me lunch money after a month. Then clothes, then school supplies. The message was always the same. I was pampered. They weren't doing it for free. And we weren't poor. In a good year, my dad made 6 figures. 3 or 4 times a week, they went out to lunch. They had the cash. They just chose not to spend it on me. I changed. Then. They did odd jobs, washed cars for $10, cleaned gutters for $20, learned 6 different ways to prepare ramen, and found out which gas station on Route 4 served day-old sandwiches for $1 after 8 p.m. I got my own shoes from the Goodwill on MLK Boulevard. When you walk into 8th grade with scuffed-up discount sneakers and your mom drives a leased Lexus, it does something to your brain that doesn't entirely mend. One day in October, I asked a teacher for an extra pen, and she looked at me like I was pathetic. That glance hurt more than being hungry. I never asked a teacher for anything again. My dad loved to be a dad in front of people. At neighborhood barbecues, he'd slap me on the back and tell everyone how I was learning how to save money. He told his friend Phil that the trouble with kids today was that their parents gave them everything. He was raising a man, not a dependent. People generally gave this remarks while holding a $12 cold-pressed juice next to a cooler full of foreign steaks. That guy had everyone in the neighborhood thinking he was the best dad ever. And if you didn't agree with the act, you couldn't be part of the group. That year, Thanksgiving definitely cemented the deal for me. They were in charge. My mom spent $300 on a spread that might have fed 20 people. A turkey, a glazed ham, and 4 different kinds of pie. I knew the precise amount because I saw the receipt from Costco on the counter and remembered it. I sat at that table eating food that my parents had bought for me and realized that it was the first genuine meal they had given me in weeks. They will pay any amount to look attractive in front of people. But my objection was that they fed their own baby on a random Tuesday. That night, I began to write things down. An inexpensive spiral notebook from the dollar store. But I noted down the dates, what they bought for themselves, what they didn't buy for me, and every time they urged me to pay my own bills. I still didn't know what to do with the notes. I just knew that one day the difference between who they said they were and who they really were would matter. And when that day arrived, I'd have proof. I was eating plain rice in the kitchen at 10 p.m. one night, maybe 3 weeks after the whole thing started. And my mom came in to get some water. She stopped at the counter and looked at me for a moment. She opened the fridge, took out some leftover chicken from their dinner, and put the container next to me on the table. She didn't say anything. She just went back to her room. My dad never knew. To be honest, it perplexed me more than it helped because it meant she knew. She knew it was wrong, yet she did it anyway. Every other day, until guilt got the best of her. I had a stable job at a small engine repair business near the industrial park along Highway 51 by the time I was 14. After school, I started sweeping floors and putting parts in bins. The owner trusted me, and within a few months, I was doing real work with him watching over me. He didn't ask a lot of personal questions, but he did pay attention. He saw that I came in hungry most days and started keeping a box of granola bars and bottled water in the back room without saying anything. He saw that my clothes were getting smaller on me because I was growing and not buying new ones. One day, he left a bag of things his nephew had outgrown on my workbench without a note. At first, Dad paid me cash, but after I reached 15 and acquired my work permit, he switched me to a legitimate paycheck. $12 an hour, 15 hours a week during the school year, and more in the summer. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was mine, and I worked hard for every dime, with grease under my nails. I preserved all of the receipts. I put every payub in a folder that I hid in the interior of my backpack. I created a checking account at a credit union across town, not the bank my parents used. I used my school ID and a copy of my birth certificate that I found in a filing cabinet when my parents were out. The credit union provided a youth account program that just required a valid ID and a minimum deposit of $10. The account was exclusively in my name. Set up direct deposit through the store and never told anyone at home about it. During this time, my neighbor Vince became the other anchor in my life. Retired electrical contractor in his early 60s, served in the army. He saw that I was going to work before dawn and arriving home after dusk. He strolled over to me while I was changing my bike chain one Saturday and just put a bag of groceries on the ground next to me. No talking, no sad face, just bread, deli meat, apples, and protein bars. I almost lost it right there on the driveway, but I kept it together because that's what I had learned to do. After my parents started rummaging through my room, Vince let me keep my tools and essential paperwork in his shed. That was the first time they really went from ignoring me to playing with me. One Wednesday after work, I returned home to find my dad sitting at the kitchen table with my budget notebook open in front of him. He had gone through my desk and found my records. He wanted to know why I had more than $2,000 saved. He was tapping the notepad like it was proof in a court case. $2,000. You've been saving money as this family suffers. I used most of it to buy school supplies and bus passes. Don't talk down to me. What happened to the rest? I looked him in the eye and said nothing. He couldn't prove anything because I had already moved my real savings to the credit union. After that, all of the critical papers moved to Vince's house. Yes, I had to put my faith in a stranger since my family was so awful. He offered me a fireproof lockbox from his own garage. My pay stubs, my budget records, and screenshots of their purchases from the family Amazon account. Their DoorDash order history photos stacked up in the kitchen garbage, and my fridge shelf had a half-empty jar of peanut butter and some slices of American cheese that were going bad. I also started fixing tiny devices on the side, including fixing broken phone displays and dead charging ports for youngsters at school. A new screen costs $10, and a new charging port costs $15. It wasn't a lot of money, but it piled up to approximately $100 a month that my parents didn't know about. The credit union account got every dime. It was hard work to go to school. I got bad scores because I was running on empty. I'd work until 9 o'clock, come home, do schoolwork until midnight, and then get up at 6 o'clock. I failed a math test for the first time in my life, and then I failed another one. My shop teacher, who used to be in the Navy, saw that I was dozing off in class and pulled me away. Since September, you have lost 8 pounds. I can tell from your face. What's happening at home? I gave him a bit of it. He didn't ask for the rest. He let me use his classroom during free periods to catch up on my work, and he also put me in touch with the school's free tutoring program. He also basically started watching over me in a way that made me feel safe without being too much, keeping track of my attendance, weight, and other things in his own records. In the meantime, my parents were working on their public image like it was a sport. Every Sunday morning, we went to church in similar outfits and sat in the front row. My dad became a member of the HOA board. My mom worked at the school book fair and talked about it on Facebook like she was saving the world. They looked like the best parents in the world while I ate rice and hot sauce for dinner 3 times a week. Around this time, I made a mistake that cost me money. I left my phone open on the kitchen counter while I was in the bathroom, and my mom read a text from my supervisor concerning my work schedule for the next week. It said how much I would make per hour and per month. That night, she told my dad. They made me sit down at the kitchen table and told me that I needed to start acting like an adult part of the family because I was making adult money. They demanded $400 each month. I was 15 years old. My dad typed up an actual document on his laptop, printed it on white computer paper with a header that said, Household Contribution Agreement in bold. $400 a month plus a share of utilities. Effective immediately, signature line at the bottom with a date field. He held it out with a ballpoint pen like this was a normal business deal and not a grown man trying to shake down his own kid. But this is the part that really hurt. My mom had read the text, so she told him about the side work, the electronics repairs. This meant that kids at school found out I'd been exposed, and a few of them stopped bringing me their phones, which cost me maybe half of that side revenue overnight. Not because I did anything wrong, but because a 15-year-old's phone repair business doesn't last. People thought your parents might come over to ask inquiries, which hurt. They saw me do the arithmetic on the rent demand. I made about $600 a month after taxes from the store and what was remained of my side work. If I paid $400 in rent and utilities, I would only have $150 left for food, clothes, school supplies, and all the other things my parents stopped paying for years ago. It just couldn't be done. I told them I wanted some time to think about it. My dad slapped the pen down. A few days? Real men don't require a few days to aid their family. My mom's voice broke on cue. We gave you everything, and you can't even perform this one thing. I told you that you just rebuilt the bathroom. New tile and a rain shower head. You're not having a hard time. That kept them quiet long enough for me to get to my room and lock the door. That night, I called my supervisor. He listened without interrupting, which was typical of him. He was quiet for a moment after I was done. You need a lawyer, not a wrench, kid. That one sentence made everything different. The next day after school, I went to the downtown public library and used their computer to look for legal help in the county. I called 3 lines and got voicemail, automated menus, and 1 line that was busy. The 4th one put me in touch with a receptionist who stated minors couldn't ask for help without a parent or adult there and hung up before I could explain. I almost gave up right then and there, but I went back the next day, phoned the same number, requested for a supervisor, got transferred twice, stayed on hold for 40 minutes, and finally spoke to a woman at the county legal help office. She was really smart, straightforward, and obviously had a lot of work to do. She asked me specific things, like how old I was, what state we lived in, and what my parents gave me and what they didn't. My dad kicked over my toolbox on the way out, and sockets and wrenches fell all over the concrete floor. That same afternoon, my boss filed a police report. The smear campaign started the next week. My dad told people at church that I was a troubled kid being controlled by outside forces. My mom backed him up, even though she had her own doubts. Some people believed him, and a few neighbors stopped waving. My shop teacher noticed the change and started keeping track of what he saw. My weight was still dropping, I had dark circles under my eyes, and there was a big difference between what my parents said in public and what was clear to anyone who was paying attention. He reported his worries through the right channels, which started a mandated reporting process under state law. I found out when the caseworker called my cell 2 days later. The caseworker was overworked and running on autopilot. She had around 40 cases on her desk, and she scheduled a house visit for me. She instructed me to have my paperwork ready, so I spent that week getting ready. I put every photo, receipt, screenshot, and dated notebook entry into a 3-ring binder, arranged by date. Half of my paperwork never made it in. The library printer was broken for days, so I had to go to FedEx and spend $18 of my own money to print proof that my parents wouldn't feed me. I mostly did this on my own. My parents staged the house like an open listing, deep cleaned every room, stocked the fridge, and took the padlock off the pantry. My dad wore a button-down shirt and used his sales voice. And to be honest, the first visit didn't go very well for me. The caseworker saw a clean house, a full fridge, and 2 parents working hard. She pointed to the screw holes where the padlock used to be, and my dad didn't miss a beat. Last spring, We had a problem with rodents. Squirrels got into the pantry through the attic. We sealed it up, but the holes are still there. I've been meaning to patch that. She wrote it down without arguing. My parents told her about my school schedule, which was close enough to sound believable. None of it was quite right. The caseworker said the case would stay open and she would come back in 3 weeks, but her tone made it sound like she was just checking a box before moving on to the next house on her list. After that visit, I went to Vince's shed and punched a workbench until my knuckles bled. The system looked at my parents' pristine kitchen and shrugged. Vince found me there 20 minutes later, bandaged my hand without saying a word, and said, "One visit doesn't close a case." You know that. He was right, but that night it didn't feel like it. After the visit, my parents kept the performance going for about 10 days. But then old habits came back. My mom started buying food I was allergic to and saying she forgot. My dad picked up his nightly questions about my income right where he left off. They couldn't help it. Control was their whole operating system. I tracked their finances through the bank statements my mom kept leaving on the printer. Credit card debt was going up fast. My dad's unemployment checks barely covered the minimums. They were maybe 4 months away from defaulting on the mortgage and too proud to admit it. Around this time, I also started quietly reaching out to extended family. I sent my cousin a long text explaining what was really going on. He called me back an hour later. "I don't know, man. Your dad seems pretty normal at family stuff. You sure you're not just upset about the rules?" That hurt, but he agreed to keep his eyes open. I just wanted one person who'd heard my side. Around this time, my mom's armor had another crack. I was doing homework at the kitchen table late one night when she came in to get water. She stood there for a minute and then said quietly, "Your father wasn't always like this." I didn't say anything. She added, "I don't know when it changed," and then she went to bed. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough. But it was something real from a woman who had worked with my dad for years. The caseworker came over on a Tuesday without warning. My dad was at a job interview and my mom had called in sick. When the caseworker got there at 2 p.m., my mom was in her pajamas with an empty fridge, a pantry that was empty again, and my bedroom door had been taken off its hinges. My dad had taken it off the weekend before as punishment for my attitude. No door meant no privacy. No way to change clothes without being visible from the hallway. The caseworker looked at the empty hinges. "Where is your son's door?" My mom's eyes darted. "My husband. It was warped. He took it off to fix it." "When?" Last week, I think. "And the pantry. It was full the last time I was here, but we haven't been to the store yet this week." The caseworker didn't argue. She just took pictures of the missing door, the empty pantry, and the fridge contents. Everything she needed was right there in front of her without the performance getting in the way. She called me later, and her tone was completely different. She told me things were getting worse. That night was the worst it ever got. My dad came home, and my mom told him about the visit. I was in my room without a door, listening to him go from quiet to volcanic in about 30 seconds. He stormed down the hall, his neck veins standing out and his face red. "You did this." Your voice was shaking. "You brought the government into my house." I said nothing. "The second you turn 18, everything you own goes on the lawn. You are dead to me." I looked at him and gave him nothing. Silence was the one thing my dad couldn't fight. He grabbed my desk chair and threw it into the wall so hard that it made a hole. Plaster dust hung in the air. He stood there breathing hard and looking at the hole he had made. For about 2 seconds, his face changed in a way I had never seen before. It looked like he was horrified at himself, as if he could see what he had become from the outside for a brief moment. Then it was gone. He stormed out the front door and didn't come back for hours. The next morning, I showed Vince the cracked wall, and he took pictures of it with timestamps. I got in touch with my legal aid contact, and for once, she called back the same day and told me to file a police report. The officer who took my statement was young and clearly uncomfortable, but he did it anyway. 3 days later, my parents made their last effort. My dad came to me with a new deal. This time, the language was softer. There was no rent, just a voluntary contribution of $200 a month toward groceries. He spoke in a calm voice and practiced delivery. My mom stood behind him, but she wasn't nodding along. She just stood there with her arms crossed and stared at the floor. I pulled out my own 3-page document, which I mostly wrote myself using a template my legal aid contact gave me because she was busy in court again. It listed every documented event from the past 3 years, including food deprivation, a locked pantry, the cancellation of insurance, workplace harassment, and property damage. It said that they would give me all the help I needed by law without any conditions. My income would not be affected, and any violations would be reported right away. My dad read the first page and his face changed 6 times. My mom started crying, not the acting kind, but the real kind where your hands shake and your breathing breaks up. My dad wouldn't sign. He pushed the paper back across the table. I'd rather lose the house than let my own kid tell me what to do. My mom stared at him, and this is when all those little cracks, the leftover chicken at midnight, the "this isn't what I wanted," the "your father wasn't always like this," finally broke wide open. Her voice was flat and steady. "Sign it. You're taking his side now." "I'm taking the side where I don't lose everything because you can't stop." She stopped. "I've been going along with this for 3 years, and look where we are. Sign the paper." The kitchen went quiet. My dad looked at her like he didn't know her. Then he picked up the pen. They both signed. I took pictures of every page and sent them to my legal aid contact and Vince before my parents even left the kitchen. Then I went to my room and sat on my bed looking at the hole my dad had punched in the wall. There was still plaster dust on the carpet because I hadn't cleaned it up yet. The wall was real, the hole was real, and the document they just signed was the most real thing in that house. People think revenge is a moment, like a door slam, a mic drop, or one terrible sentence. But real revenge is a system that takes months of patience and turns someone's own behavior into the weapon that tears them apart. My parents signed that agreement in December. By March, I had 3 months of documented compliance and 3 months of cracks showing because they couldn't change who they were. Control and image management were hardwired into them. My dad's job search went nowhere. His old employer had flagged his termination as for cause, and medical device sales is a small world. He ended up working the night shift in a warehouse for 1/3 of what he used to make. The caseworkers came to see him every month, and they needed grocery receipts, insurance verification, and school progress reports. The nuclear part happened in April. My dad broke the rules by making small, deniable moves. He rerouted household bills to a P.O. box so I couldn't keep track of my spending. My mom had switched to the cheapest groceries, so my food access technically met the agreement, but the quality dropped to barely edible. He also started a campaign to ruin my reputation with my extended family. I found out from my cousin who called sounding shaken. "Dude, your dad called my mom last night. He told everyone that you're having a breakdown or something and that you've been making up stories about them to get attention." "What did he say?" "That you got CPS involved for no reason and that some neighbor is controlling you. He also called grandma. She left you a voicemail, right? In it, she said she was praying for you to get the help you needed." That voicemail broke something in me that I didn't even know was still there. He wasn't just ignoring me anymore. He was cutting off all of my family ties as a way to stop the truth from coming out. That was it. I called my legal aid contact and told her I wanted to go to family court. She was honest. She couldn't represent me, but she put me in touch with a family law attorney who took pro bono cases through the County Bar Association. It took 2 weeks and 3 interviews for an attorney to agree to take my case. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life. The filing set off an investigation that required my parents to give financial disclosures, parenting plans, and character references. When they listed church friends and HOA contacts as references, a court-appointed investigator called those people. Suddenly, the private fiction they'd kept up for years was being looked at by someone with subpoena power. My dad's references ruined him. 3 of them said separately that he'd called me mentally unstable. The investigator compared this to my school records. There were no disciplinary issues, my grades were getting better, and my shop teacher praised me. The investigator thought my dad's story was so different from the truth that it was evidence of deliberate manipulation. My mom tried to fix things by cooperating, but she made a big mistake. She brought up the rent contract on her own during the interview, saying it was a misunderstanding. She didn't know that the investigator already had a copy. When she saw the actual document that demanded $400 a month from a 15-year-old, she said my dad wrote it. She also said that things at home had been worse than anyone knew and that she had gone along with things she shouldn't have. That broke up their united front for good. In June, the family court judge looked over everything. The binder, the photos, the letters, the police reports, the CPS records, and the investigator's findings. The judge ordered both of them to take parenting classes, CPS to keep an eye on them for 12 months, and a guardian ad litem to look after my welfare. The judge also officially found that both parents had financially neglected a minor child. This went on their permanent record with family services. My dad sat in that courtroom and listened to the judge call him a neglectful parent while a court reporter typed every word. My mom sat next to him with her hands in her lap. They didn't look at me. After that, their social circle shrank. Church friends crossed the street at the grocery store. The HOA kicked my dad off the board. He couldn't afford the mortgage on his lower income. By August, they had put the house up for sale, losing money to avoid foreclosure. They sold the house they had used as a prop for their perfect family act for $20,000 less than what they owed. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town.